Okay, so Kelly is going to do a kind of a deep dive into React. So I thought I would lead off by doing a shallow end of the pool kind of presentation. So this is a quick start with React 101, if you will. Um, for people who have never looked at React before or are very new, I want to give you a quick way to jump in and play around. So I'm going to use this handy tool, command line tool called Create React App. But a prerequisite to using this one is Node.js. So you also need to install Node.js. And then once we got that, we can start playing. So I'm gonna jump right to the command line. So what you do to start off the command line, you pull up your Spotlight, command space, and you type terminal, and you fire up the terminal. I'm gonna assume you have already installed Node.js. If you want to double check, you can type node, hit enter, and see if it returns something, a JavaScript prompt like this. Here you can type in some JavaScript. If that works, you have Node. And then you can start installing Create React App. If you look through their documentation or README page, they will tell you how to install it. It is that command. So I would just copy that command and put it in my terminal and hit enter, and that will install the tool for me. I'm not going to do it. It's going to take too long. True. Yeah, depending on how you installed Node.js, you may need to say sudo and then npm install. Yeah, sadly, most of the projects out there don't tell you that. So, thank you. Okay, so once you've done that, what you do is you type create React app, and then you type the name of your application. It'll create a folder with that same name. I'm gonna name it Hello World. And that is gonna generate a Hello World folder with a bunch of files in it. It also install the stuff in it, so which is still gonna take a long time. So there's no way for me to escape the npm install process. So what it's going to bring down is the React library and the React DOM library, as well as a whole bunch of development tools that are required to build your application that's written in React. And that includes Webpack. What else? I think there's a CSS, like modular CSS library that comes with it. There's some Node.js based watcher tools and such. There's a server in there. Whole bunch of stuff that you'll need to make your development process kind of easy. Oh, it includes Babel. Forgot to mention that. Babel is the tool that enables you to write JavaScript in the latest, greatest ES6 or ES7 or ES 2016 or whatever you want to call that. Latest version of JavaScript. Okay, so that is done. And oh, that's a lot of files. I think that the directory it has created is just hello world, and I'm gonna create I'm gonna open my text editor to start navigating these files here. So these are the files. The main files that you wanna look at are in the source folder. Index.js is the entry point, and then there's also an app.js, app.test, etc. The way you run this application is npm start. When you do npm start, it'll start a server, and it'll also open up a new tab in your browser to point at the location of that server. So now this is your app without you having to do anything. But this is actually not very satisfying yet because I haven't actually done anything. So if you want to look through this code, the way it's structured is this is the top level entry point. Oops. I'm gonna make the text size bigger. This is the top level entry point of the file. It's gonna render some application. This bit here that looks like HTML. If you're not familiar with React, you'll notice we got some HTML code inside of JavaScript code. That is a React innovation, and it's kind of weird, but you can actually, like, this is in reality some JavaScript. This thing will get converted to some JavaScript. So what you could actually take this thing and say store it in a variable, and that'll work. And I'll put this variable back in here, and that'll do the same thing. So like, it's HTML is just like a value you can put in a variable. This app, what does that refer to? Well, that refers to this app object that was imported from this app module, and that app module was defined here. It defines this little component here. I'm gonna start from scratch though, so I always like starting from scratch. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna delete everything having to do with app. I'm gonna do the most basic hello world imaginable. I'm not gonna touch this service worker thingy because I don't know what it is. Okay, so I just broke it by deleting a bunch of files, but that's okay. That's because I don't have app anymore. It says this module failed to build because I couldn't find an app.js. That's because I just deleted it. That's okay. I know what I'm doing. I'm just not gonna import the app. And instead of using the app here, I'm just gonna put in some regular HTML here. So I can say h1, close h1. And that's a hello world app. So this is the most basic hello world React app that I can imagine, and that works. Okay. Any questions to this point? Okay. Which time do I have? I'll go another. What time do we start, Randall? Randall here? What time do we start? 10:20. Okay. All right. Okay. So, the big thing about one of the big things about React is that you can build your application in terms of modular components. So I can make a component that encapsulates a thing, and then I can repeat that thing via using the component. So let's say I'm just gonna make a component, and the way you make components is using a class. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna make a hello world component, and a component has to extend react.component. So that's the first requirement of a component. The second requirement of a component is it has to have a method like this called render. And that render method has to return something that's HTML. Like that. Okay. So once I do that, I have correctly defined or I don't know if it's correct yet, actually. I think I have defined a hello world component. And now I can use this component by using the name of the component as my tag name. Okay, so I'm just gonna, instead of doing a h1 here, I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna make an hello world tag. And that should do the same thing. I'll change this text to make sure I can, my code is actually having an effect on this thing. So this is now a reusable component, and I can reuse it. I could try to use a hello world twice, for example. And that didn't work. Why? Anyone know? Yeah? Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted someone to correct me. Okay, yeah. So JSON JSX elements must be wrapped in an enclosing tag. So these are the two adjacent elements. It wants me to wrap them in an enclosing tag, which I interpret that to mean like I can only have one top level element. Like if I want a variable to contain some HTML, that HTML must be all under one element. So if I do this, now I got two headers instead of one, and I can go more. Okay. Okay. One last thing is I'll cover props. So you can pass information into the component. So I want to say hello world to someone, me. Yeah. Okay. I want to say hello to a bunch of people, and I can utilize the information that's been passed in to this component within the component, sort of like a variable or like a function parameter. I'll substitute that in here. So the way you use it is this props dot the name of the property that was passed in. So I'll say this dot props dot name, and then whatever was passed in gets substituted in there. Mostly like variables. Okay, any questions at this point? Yeah. Okay, you would, in that case, there's, if you were using plain React, once you level up and you add Redux to the mix, it's different, but then you would use props. When you're using plain React, then you would want to use state instead of props. And state is like variables that can change, whereas props is more like constants. They're not, at least within the context of this component itself, is not meant to change. It could get changed from the outside though, but that's more of a thing that you do with Redux or other kind of stuff. Okay, that's all I wanted to cover, unless there's one more question. Okay. Okay, I'll make another component really quick. My other component. Yes, my other component could link to my hello world component. No problem, just like this. So if I were to add my other component here, then it's like drilling down to my other component to render hello world, which then drills down to hello world to render the h1 tag. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna hand it over to Kelly. Kelly, you ready? All right.